So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. I hope there are hundreds of indie studios in the other side of the screen because we have gathered 4 top publishers to give useful information and tips about publishing. So please introduce yourself. Becky?
This is Becky from Game Hollywood. We do browser games publishing in English-speaking markets and other languages in EU and North America. And also we publish mobile games in China. So it's happy to join this meeting, and I hope that my answer will help the audience, and that's all.
Hi everyone, my name is Marc Melton. So I'm the General Manager of Marvelous Europe. So we're part of the European arm of Marvelous Group. We're sort of known for Story of Seasons, Rune Factory, Daemon X Machina, and the forthcoming Sakuna of Rice and Rune through an acquisition that we've done with partners. So we focus primarily on premium console. We're developers and publishers, and as I look after European team, there is a US team and a team in Tokyo looking after Asia as well. So great to be here, and hope our answers can help.
Hello, Chris from Those Awesome Guys. I'm the publishing director based out of Bucharest, Romania. We're a small to mid-size indie dev/publishing hybrid. Started off as a developer, now turned to developer/publisher, sort of take what we learned over the years and support devs that are in the same position that we were in the early days. Very happy to join, and hopefully I'll be able to contribute some helpful information to this panel.
All right, I'm Matthieu Brossard. I'm the publishing director for What Games. What Games is a publishing entity of Gameloft. We specialize in free-to-play casual games, and we want to basically help developers with everything they don't want to do, so we can do it for them with the experience we've gathered at Gameloft. And as my colleagues here, let's hope we can say some interesting things.
Thank you. And I'm Oscar Saun. I work as game designer and producer. I co-founded my own indie video game studio, and right now I'm a GamBCN incubation program manager. So what we'll do today, so I will be launching questions to the 4 speakers, and they will just discuss and answer them. And afterwards, I'll briefly explain you what we do at GamBCN and what we can do to help you, and then it will be your turn to ask us the questions that you want. So let's play. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
First question. Should indie studios look for a publisher, or are there other options? Who wants to start? Come on.
Go on, Becky.
Well, I think developers, they could publish themselves. It's very common here now in China, and also in overseas markets. But also it's good to work with publishers, because publisher will have more resources. Like in China and Vietnam, you will need to have some government license certificate to publish in the local market, and it has to be the local company to do that. And also publishers will have more local resources like payments and marketing and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Who else wants to contribute? I think Chris, you want to say something, on Marc? Go ahead.
So I was going to chip in there. I think Becky's absolutely right. I think it really depends on the objectives of the development team. There are so many tools and friends and networks now for people to be able to publish themselves. And I think that's great. But it sometimes comes down to just doing what teams are good at and lowering risk, and working with partners to reduce time to market and use expertise, I think, can help. So there are lots of different versions of partnerships, lots of different versions of publishers, and lots of different routes to market. And like I said, it's how much time do people really have for development, making sure the game is as best as it can be, but also to work very hard to get partners who can evangelize for your product and your creative work. So I think publishers serve their purpose, but it's finding the right publisher, which is always the big thing.
Very much agree with what Marc and Becky just said. Basically, from like a independent, like indie publishing standpoint these days, there's more publishers than ever. There's more opportunities than ever, and especially outside of the classical like developer-publisher relationship, there's so many things you can try out. These days, if you're just looking for the money, you can go to a fund, you can get investment, you can go to your local government agency in a lot of cases, and growing number of cases, to get the cash that you need to develop your title. If you have the cash flow, but you would like to have basically like a publishing for hire, that's no longer a problem. There's enough agencies and companies out there, trustworthy and experienced, that are good at doing that job. And for me, like the sweet spot is in the middle, where you want the money or the development support on the financial side, as well as the services that a publisher can support you with. Then you might want to consider going with a publisher. In any other situation, you probably have a alternative that you really want to consider. But yeah, at the end of the day, you shouldn't underestimate how valuable having a publisher can be in specific situations.
Yeah, and to continue down the path of Chris, is, to me, it boils down to what kinds of skills you want to develop inside your team. Like if you're launching, in our case, free-to-play games, you will most likely need marketing, you will most likely need user acquisition assets, you will most likely need to run those campaigns, you will need QA, you will need different services like Chris is mentioning. And the question is, do you want to develop this internally? Do you want to hire the right people to do that? Or do you have the money to actually, purchase that service elsewhere? If you are in those two situations, then you can probably self-publish. But in the case where you feel like you want to develop the game and focus on your game, focus on your product, and you have developers and artists, and this is what you really want to do, then you may leave those different subjects with the publisher and the experience that they developed.
I think just to add one more thing.
So I was
Go
going
ahead,
to
Marc.
add on that about the odd situation. There seems to be no shortage of cash in the industry. It's not a money thing. It's partnerships. The cash is there, and it's looking often for the right home and the right relationship. So again, focusing first and foremost on the right creative product and the right title and franchise. If that is the focus, then everything else will follow.
So, as we don't have much time, let's go to the next question. So how can indie developers contact publishers? Only in video game events, or are there other ways? Chris,
we'll give you
Matthieu, go.
Our email addresses at the end of this conference. I'm pretty sure it's the same for everyone. We can get contacted directly outside of the video events, of course, and we're happy to be contacted at any point. I don't want to speak for everyone, but
I think that's very much the case. I think these days there's so many avenues. Obviously, publishers are looking for teams to work with. Like we are eager to collaborate with companies out there. We're looking for that next big project that might fit within our portfolio, we being sort of the industry. So people generally don't want to necessarily, want to make it too hard to contact them. There's LinkedIn, which I, at this point, have received plenty of pitches through. There's all these digital events these days due to COVID still being a very big topic, especially if you're not in a position where you can attend all the physical events that used to be happening and hopefully will return sometime in the future once everything is over. If everything is over, you have the digital events these days to reach out to people directly. Maybe don't go the super personal route. I had one person once connect to me via Instagram direct messages. That was a little bit too much, but otherwise I think you're pretty good to just be straightforward, tell people you want to connect with them to talk about your project, ideally send along some material and initial outreach, and then worst case scenario, there's a decline.
They could also check those like mobile games. They could check the top rankings. They could see the companies. They are not just developers publishing the game, but also publishers doing the same thing. So that's a way to find maybe a good publisher for your game. And also for browser games, you could check those famous websites like Congregate, Facebook, and Armor. Those are options too.
Yeah, and I think contacting is certainly one thing to consider, but what you're contacting with is quite another. It's great to network. Networks are actually very, very important, and GamBCN is a great example of a network that has grown and adds value in that way. But yeah, contacting is one thing, but again, having the backup to talk is to show, as the other panelists have mentioned, is really important, because there's a need to pre-qualify. So I have no problem chatting with people and so on, but seeing stuff at an early stage, we'll come on to this in a second about materials, but yeah, there was a time certainly where events were great because it's good to meet people face to face, to get a sense of passion, of energy, to learn more about teams, and to have a coffee or a beer, and just to get people slightly off duty, because if we're in work mode in an office trying to battle emails, sometimes it's just making sure that the game should be a priority rather than the admin that we may typically do on a daily basis.
Okay, so keep that word in mind, networking. That's very important. So next question, which materials are you willing to receive from developers?
Links, test links.
But can you concrete what exactly? Do you need the demo? Do you need a vertical slice? Do you need the GDD? What do you need exactly? What do you ask?
I think willing is an important word here. Willing probably very many different things in general. Everyone has, I believe, their own little idea of what they would like to receive in an initial outreach. Like for me, it's a simple PDF pitch deck that summarizes the pitch itself, what the game is about, maybe a little bit of analysis that the company already did on what kind of market they're going for, maybe some marketing ideas that they had from the forefront, and a first look at budgeting and the timeline. That's like concretely super important. For us, we usually focus on games that are somewhat advanced to the degree that there's something playable. That again can vary from like a very first prototype to being in beta state, but something playable in our particular case, and even ideal, in an even more ideal case, it's maybe an extended budget that is attached as well, plus a link to some gameplay footage. And not more. I tend to not be super excited when I receive an email with like 12 attachments, but I'm pretty sure everyone else here in SCA has like their own little twist to this.
Yeah, to me, it really depends on what kind of answer you expect from the publisher. If you send a pitch deck, you might get an answer as to how your product is fitting into the market right now. You might get global feedback as to, okay, maybe you can look at this reference, maybe you can look at this other reference, maybe you should look into these different ideas. So you will have global things because your deck is something fairly global. But now if you send a version, if you send an MVP version, now you can focus on everything that makes a game great. So you can have some feedback from the publisher as an external point of view from your team, and you can really be helped on elements that you might not have thought of. So it's like you're not asking a specific question, you're just asking an open question to the publisher and saying, look, this is what I did, what do you think? And I think this is the best approach if you can get there. But as Chris mentioned, we're also ready to receive them at different stages. We will just be able to give different levels of feedback depending on what we receive.
I would add that certainly everything that's just been said, really, an idea, the team, ultimately it's getting the attention of your target audience. In this case, it might be a publisher, and explaining what you want and what you're looking for, and what the game and the team can deliver. So I think for most publishers, to Chris's point, are evolving, and it does change. Sometimes you get a lot of stuff, and it's overwhelming to actually look at a lot of things and to give that give the product a lot of time. However, sometimes it's a simple pitch and it's a seed that you think, wow, there's really something in this, and actually this really fits with us as a publisher and our identity and the sort of games that we're involved with. So tell us more. And so don't worry if you don't send too much there. If it's interesting, the publisher will get back to you. And again, sometimes there's so much coming through that the more you send, the longer it will take to get back to you. So it's a balance that is needed.
Okay.
If I can add, sorry.
Oh yeah, sure.
Just one thing to add. One positive trend that I've been seeing for publishers that have sort of either like some internal guidelines about what they would like to receive or what projects in particular they're looking out for, if it's a genre or specific platforms, more and more often there's either some guides on the website or maybe like a blog post by some of the scouts and developer relations managers on the individual publishing teams that sort of gives you a more clearer idea about what people are looking for. I remember in particular like Tiny Builds, the last time I checked had something like that. Raw Theory put out a blog post basically breaking down what they were ideally hoping for in the pitch, and a couple funds out there like Indie Fund has basically like a form on their website. That's something that certainly not everyone has, including ourselves. I'm guilty of that myself, but it's something to keep an eye out for and at least maybe give the website a quick glimpse and check if something like that is already there.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks. So next question. In which state of development should be projects received in order to be accepted? And in the case of mobile games, must they have been soft launched?
So I'll take that one. As a general rule of thumb, it's very common for publishers to help with the soft launch. As you mentioned, it's basically most publishers will want to make a decision based on the test they run on market, at least in the mobile sphere. That's what we do for free-to-play. So we don't expect from the developers that they launch their own MVP, their own minimum viable product, so that they can get relevant KPIs. We rather work with them so that we can collect them together. And in the same way that in the ultimate relationship, once a deal is signed, the duties are shared between the developer and the publisher, and the developer continues doing the game, and the publisher handles the marketing and a whole bunch of different services. To us, it's the same thing during the test. We want to show the developer how we work in terms of marketing, meaning that we will be the one creating the user acquisition assets, we will be the one running the user acquisition campaigns, and we will also be giving back to the developer all the information we collect in terms of marketing and how the game has performed during the test. So it's really a coming together, right? A publishing relationship is this, is you have two companies with different specialties coming together. So the test is the first step for that. And we don't expect the developer to make everything. So come to us with an MVP, and then you can get a test that is handled directly by the publisher, and you can continue focusing on your next version of the game. And once the test is completed, you can have a whole bunch of information, including some marketing information that you might not have had otherwise.
Becky, is the same for you and Game Hollywood?
Well, we would like something that at least you have some test metrics maybe for our reference, because our team will test the game at the same time they will check the game if it's suitable for us, because we do better in like RPG, SLG, and trajectory shooting games, and we know the metrics how we think the game will be successful to work on. So that's what we would look for.
Good. What about the PC console games?
Certainly, it sort of depends. It depends on the USP of the game, or the unique selling point. I suppose if it's a strong visual proposition, we'd like to see more visuals represented. If it's a strong game mechanic or something more unique, then to demonstrate how that would play. So it varies, and we can also then look at maybe areas that need improvement, and that's part of the ongoing discussion that would take place. So anything that would give us a feel for the sort of the creative vision of the game and how it would play in the hands of a consumer, that is, we'd be comfortable in receiving lots of different versions or stages of development.
Good. And do you want to add something, Chris?
Don't have too much to add. I guess the only thing is on the PC side, outside of the free-to-play realm, because that's not something that we deal within. If you look at the more premium side, and I guess like the equivalent on that end for a soft launch, which I would just say is more of an early access strategy. Having a game out in general, I would say as a general statement, in the premium PC console market will make it most likely a lot trickier to find a partner, because that initial launch visibility or launch opportunity has already been used or sort of put into effect. That's the only thing I'd add here.
And one thing to add for the free-to-play market, we have tools that unfortunately you guys can't use yet on console, and it's including Google Early Access, where you can limit the number of people who will see your game. So you shouldn't be worried about that particular like initial entry to market, because you can control it and send it to like a target market, including the US, for example, but only limited to like the first 4,000 who comes into it. And this way we don't make a big release, we don't talk about it, we don't do anything except send people from Facebook, Instagram, from different platforms to your game, collect the KPIs, and then we still not here. So we have a few advantages for this kind of test.
Very good, thank you. Just related with this last question, how should be game development? How long should be game development as maximum in order to be accepted? I mean, do you accept, for example, games that say, oh, I will finish it in 2 years or 2 years and a half?
When finishing, are you talking about the initial launch of the game, or sort of the extended timeline that the team is considering putting into the game post-release for like post-launch support?
Yeah, the development time they need to finish the game before launch, of course.
Understood. Okay. Again, I think that very much varies. For us right at the moment, we don't sign anything that's like that is scheduled to be released within the next 6 months. In general, there might be an exception at some point further down the road, but there's just a initial setup that you sort of have to run through with the title, get it onboarded, make sure that your marketing team has the initial has enough of a timeline to get things started and figure something out. Similar timelines apply if you're publishing on console, for example, or if you want to have some serious biz dev conversations. On the other side of the scale, for us, looking ahead like 2.5 years is somewhat realistic. If we're currently getting pitches for like late 2023, those are usually one outside of our budget range, and two not really that interesting for us at the moment. So yeah, somewhat in between. But again, that's very much focused on just us as an individual publisher. That might vary.
Good. So what about the rest?
For our teams, that we have funded 3 small teams that we have a goal that they could have a product that we launch in 12 months or to 18 months. And we also work with some small teams that they may have 3 to 4 products in a year. So it really depends.
Yeah, it's from our side, it can be a very quick turnaround to quite a long relationship, and it depends on whether there are just 1 or 2 developers that will take a while, but we really believe in the proposition and what they're working on, through to more accomplished team in terms of the volume or product they've already got out there that will be able to deliver things. So it will vary per publisher. Some publishers will look for a gap in their release schedule and try and put products in there. That is one approach. It's not necessarily ours, but again, it depends based on the product proposition and the team. And if we believe in something, then it takes. We'll have that discussion, and as long as things are upfront and open and everyone understands the expectation, then we work together and hopefully we deliver a good result, irrespective of the time.
And so for the free-to-play mobile market, what we try to do is we try to avoid entering into this sphere of are we going to spend 2-3 years on something and then we're going to discover completely what the market is going to think about this? So we have embraced for several years now the game as a service approach, where you launch the game and then you update it. Like if you see the free-to-play market now, you have games that have 5, 6, 7 years of active updates, active involvement by the developer to improve the game. And so when we're asking like how much time before launch, what we really want to see is what is the time you need to create something that is engaging, but that is not necessarily the entirety of what you have in mind for that project, because we want you to get to market decently quick, because the time to market is extremely important. The free-to-play mobile market moves quick and the trends change very, very drastically, very fast. So you don't want to take too much time to get there. You really want to find the smallest amount of time that would get you to a product you like, but that is not necessarily full. And then keep that, send it to the market, start operating it, and keep some time to update it now that you have the feedback from the whole community, and that's feedback through reviews, but also feedback through tracking, so that you can really improve your game based on what your players are doing in it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Matthieu. Yeah. Okay, so a question for you all. Do you fund the game development?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do when the KPIs are good at the test.
Okay, perfect. That was a quick one. What else? One big mystery in the publishing branch is what publishers do exactly to market the game. Because when you sign an agreement, they always say, "Yeah, I'm going to invest like 3,000 millions in marketing." But what do you do exactly?
It's a real funny one. There are no secrets, there are no mirrors or anything. Basically, if there are secrets or hidden things from developers, then I would argue that the relationship is not maybe as good as it should be. On the marketing side, really, it's just helping understand the target audience. It's competitor analysis and research. It's doing the basics. It's understanding what is underneath the game and how best to optimize it. What does that mean? Well, it means getting the research so you can make assumptions, backup assumptions. You can then plan to ensure that you have the best opportunity to bring your market to the right audience and to make it successful. So yes, it does involve spending money. It's not just the planning, but and it's not just buying banner ads. That is certainly not. That is part of the tools in the armory to take a game to market. But there should be a lot of hard work behind the scenes to understand exactly the game and its appeal, and then offering a very solid and justifiable plan about how you intend to reach that audience and convert that audience to purchase or to evangelize. There are different objectives to this as well. Early on in a campaign, you will want the game that maybe never been heard of before. You want people to discover it for themselves, to evangelize and talk about it, and then it gets right up to purchase or to the release date, where you have a very different approach, and hopefully everyone now knows about it. You're trying to convert. So there's probably not enough time to explain exactly what we would do around that, but broadly speaking, it's just typical marketing, and a basic marketing rulebook should be followed. If anyone's promising secret sauce or magic bullets or anything else to change the way they market, I would like to know more, because marketing is just doing the basics well.
So do you want to add something else?
Marketing team, they will know how to spend the money. We do online marketing most of the time to Facebook, Google, and networks, just to acquire users to our games.
Yeah, I think maybe. Matthieu or Becky, in mobile, I guess the investment, the most investment goes to user acquisition, right?
Yeah.
It does. There's a step before it, which is closer to what Marc was describing, which in our case is App Store optimization, where we can have already some tracking elements, knowing which icon is working best, which screenshots are working best, which description, etc. And publishers have a whole bunch of tools that we use to improve that, and that's for organic downloads. Then we have paid downloads, and for the paid downloads is the creation of user acquisition assets, the running of campaigns, knowing about all the different platforms and how to spend the money. That's what you were saying, Becky. And then I would only add two things, which is a publisher has built usually a very good relationship with the stores, and that's something you really want to understand what they expect, to understand how to talk to them, to understand how to pitch your games for featuring. Featuring is still a good visibility tool, even if it's not a massive user acquisition tool anymore. And then lastly, but sometimes importantly, some publishers also have developed a cross-promotion scheme where you by signing with a publisher, you enter inside a portfolio. This portfolio has usually been built so that the audience inside that portfolio might be interested of the other games that you have, and running cross-promotion allows for that audience to kind of stay there and hopefully discover more of the products that they already like. So cross-promotion, store relationships, user acquisition campaigns, and also just the investment. You as a developer, you've already invested a lot to develop your game. You don't necessarily have the cash laying around so that you can make marketing investments, and that's something that the publisher provides.
One thing that I want to just add to that Matthieu just pointed out, a very valid point, is generally the cross promotion between titles. That can be something very well executed within like a publishing range, which is why I think the publishing brand these days can be massively important and can make a huge difference from the get-go. If you decide to go like the independent route, or instead partner with someone like Devolver, that over the past 10 plus years has created a huge name for themselves within the indie games publishing realm and has a massive following therefore that knows there will be interesting quality titles coming out under that label. People are going to be paying attention to whatever they announce, no matter what it is. That's a very, very helpful marketing tool as well. Generally speaking, if you're an independent developer in conversation or about to enter a conversation with a publisher, it does not hurt at all to just reach out to developers that have previously worked with that publisher. People are pretty open in this industry. Yeah, there are NDAs in place. There's certain things that people can and cannot talk about. But when it comes to just sharing feedback about experiences, that's the easiest way to get like an inside view of how other partners that have previously worked with that partner feel about how marketing, as an example, has been approached.
And actually,
I was going to say, like, to add on that value, like we mentioned at the beginning of these meetings that we didn't know each other personally, but I actually know both of your brands from the console brands and the PC brands. So like if I hear your name, I will actually be curious, and it's not my market. So yeah, it does have a value.
And I was going to add partnerships, and networking. It's really important. The publishers will also bring a lot of experience in what has worked before and what will work now, and partnerships not just work in a digital environment, but also physical. The physical market is massive across Europe and US and indeed Asia, and often we talk about digital, but physical is not as sexy these days, but still drives a significant amount of revenue. So having the right partners, working with the right people, that makes a huge amount of difference in lowering risks, speeding up time to market, and getting the results that you would need for a product. So choose wisely. There are lots of really good people, as Chris mentioned, who would be very willing to have conversations, and from those conversations be pointed in different directions, and you'll be able to probably have a view of the best way and the best partners to speak to get the best from marketing product, and the best from marketing from a publisher as well that you work with.
Okay, good. That was a good one. And now, what kind of games are you looking for? And I would like you all answer this question because some studios in the audience would like to contact you in order to publish their games.
Well, for us, we look for some non-flash, mid-core, hardcore RPG games and SLG, and also maybe some shooting games. Because we've been publishing browser games since 2010, I think, and those are Flash games. However, Adobe will not support Flash anymore, and at the end of this year, so we will need to find some replacement, like make games that made by Unity and Cocos. That could be transferred to mobile game and also browser games. That could be cross-platform games. And those browser games are we found for EU and North American markets. As for Chinese market, we would like to find mobile games because we have the license and the certificate to do so, and we also have the experience to do so.
Okay, who's next?
Sure, I can go next. For us, we're very much focused on premium PC and console titles in the indie range. So we're most certainly not in a position where we can fund multi-million-dollar projects, rather in the range of hundreds of thousands US dollars. We have three pillars that we look out for in new projects that we approach or that we get approached by. One being replayability to some degree, not meaning a roguelike title necessarily, but a sort of set-in-stone 3-hour narrative campaign with no way to extend that or no way to branch out would probably be a little bit of a trickier sell for us. Expandability, second factor, and a possibility or some indicators that tell us we can build a community around that. We're very much focused on building a brand around our titles and supporting them long after the release, not only putting it out there and sort of wrapping it up. Our titles so far that we've released, developed, and published were all in that range, of like putting them out there and then supporting them for a couple of years. So that's what we're sticking to.
Good. I guess from our side, for Marvelous, obviously things like Story of Seasons and Daemon X Machina are now Sakuna, Rise and Rune. We have a mix of I suppose sim and JRPG style games, and survival we're quite keen on. Not really into first person shooter or horror, but never say never. I think because we develop and publish as well, we have a core type of game that typically we would look for. And to Chris's point, I think something a franchise or potential to grow and to continue to invest in franchises, that's particularly compelling, where there's something strong behind the title as well. It's we would consider different levels of investment, but depending on the title and depends on whether Europe, US, and Asia are involved, we're all involved together. But we're not scared of big numbers. But again, we have a sort of a focus in an area that we typically play in, and would like to take those games and have a much more Western orientation going forward.
Matthieu?
And for us, we actually complement completely Becky. I guess you did a good job, Oscar, finding us. And we basically handle projects. We look for projects that are, if you look at the spectrum of different games, from like hyper casual to hardcore on the mobile market, we start where hyper casual meets casual. Like, we don't want to go completely hyper casual, but some games are kind of in the middle, and we start being interested there. And then we go all the way to games that are kind of mixing casual and mid-core. And that particular part is very interesting right now, because sometimes we can manage to have a casual marketing, so marketing that attracts a lot of people, and then when people get into the games, they also get involved into the mid-core side of things, and that provides the depth. So this is really our range. This is where we want to operate, and the reason behind it is because, well, it's a growing market. The casual market is very much growing on mobile platforms, and also because we feel it's a match between developers and publishers, because you can create projects on the casual market that are not too long to go to markets, that don't require necessarily a massive amount of investment, but still have good potential for monetization. So that's where we are.
Good, thank you. Okay, question number 9. What are the classic mistakes to avoid when considering working with a publisher? That's a good one.
For me personally, it's just entering into a agreement without consulting, like basically being in a situation oftentimes with new studios that haven't been around forever, getting an agreement, sign that agreement because you're excited about, oh, a publisher wants to work with me, and not rethinking that a couple of times. Most people in this industry are absolutely wonderful and great to work with, including everyone on this talk, on this call. But there are situations where not necessarily because there's evil involved, but just because expectations are set differently. People enter an agreement, people sign a contract, and later on it turns out they're very unhappy with that contract, or they're very unhappy with that collaboration, which doesn't really help anyone. I think, generally speaking, putting more thought into the question that we addressed in the very beginning, do I need a publisher? And the second part, is this publisher I'm talking to at this moment the right fit for me? In the same sense that publishers are asking themselves that every single day about the developers that they are considering working with.
I think that's key, isn't it? It's setting expectation. It's like with everything in life. You know, if you're going into a relationship, then you need to understand there needs to be respect, but you need to go in with eyes wide open. And to Chris's point, no one is trying to do anyone over in this industry, and unfortunately there are bad stories. Those are the ones you hear about. The good ones you don't hear about, and there are very successful games, teams, publishers, developers, and they've worked well together. But having upfront conversations, ask those questions. You know, if it's marketing, well, what does marketing actually mean? Is it just the cash and they're going to do some banner ads, or is it sort of more involved? And it's setting expectation, exactly what you mean by certain words. Internationally, it can be challenging with different cultures and different languages. Things can be lost in translation, but that's why, to Chris's point, take time, meet people if it's feasible and safe to do so, and just get to know the other person in the relationship. That's what you do, I hope, in personal relationships. It's the same in business, in my view.
Good. Well, I jumped directly to last question because we are running out of time.
Can I just answer that one? Sorry, I was waiting to see if Becky would want to jump in. This is just one situation I've seen a few times that I think is good to avoid, and this is basically developers believing so much in their project that they go all in, they create the entirety of the project, and then they run out of money, and they're like, oh man, I can't, like, either I ship this or I'm done. So that's when they start contacting publishers. So if my advice is really to set yourself in a situation where you're in control of the beginning of that relationship, and you're not in control if you've done if you spend all your money and then no comment that the publisher can make will be able to be addressed because you don't have the budget anymore. So my advice is really start contacting publishers, different ones, and start doing so fairly early in your game project, so you can see which one has a good fit, and so you can implement potential ideas or changes. At least you can consider them before you get to the end of your game, and that will avoid that situation where nothing can be done. This is what we have, and you want it, which is not the best selling point.
I think the worst case scenario that you could run into, or the biggest indicator that you might be running into a direction that might not end up being ideal, is if your pitch deck includes in sort of the market analysis or your market positioning that you created for yourself at 2, 3, 4, however many games you have included in that slide of your presentation that are all leading sales in their genre. I see that every other day where we get pitch decks and sales expectations are everyone is comparing themselves to the games at the forefront of the specific individual genres, like a Celeste, obviously, something that gets mentioned very often in indie development, which is an absolute gem and has sold fantastically. Similar Enter the Gungeon is some game that I see every other day in pitch decks. And I'm German, so I'm generally pessimistic all the time. That's a stereotype, but it's absolutely true. And I would love to see that more, basically planning ahead for what happens worst case. It's not only going to affect you as a developer with your project, it might affect the publisher as well, but in the long run, it can ultimately mean the end of your studio if things go wrong. So you want to be careful and just plan ahead in a more careful sense. It's good to dream, but it's also good to have a backup plan.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a good one. So last question. Why do you collaborate with initiatives such as GamBCN?
So I'll start. The reason for me is quite simple. As publishers, I think we focus a lot on the products themselves. We look at games, we look at pitches, we really focus on this. And I think entities like GamBCN really offer a broader help. They accompany on many other different subjects, and they might put you in touch with us if the question is about products, but they might put you in touch with someone else if what you need for your company is elsewhere. So it's really a point of contact, a bit of a broader umbrella, and that's why we think we can partner with GamBCN and really have a fruitful relationship between all parties involved.
Good, thank you.
So from our side of Marvelous, I think it's a fascinating ecosystem that is giving something back and supporting developers. I think it's not a wholly altruistic gesture. What we get is to learn how things are done. We are a development studio, but we're still learning. Publishers and developers are still learning. And I mentioned earlier, the network is not about just picking up phones and saying, speak to this, that, or the other person. Actually, that network can be supportive. And I think with Oscar and the team and the work they've done, the teams we've met, we've learned a huge amount, probably as much as the studios who have been successful on being on it. So we're trying, and I believe we are, being a better publisher certainly is being part of this, and I hope our door will remain open for the current studios and for future as well, because we see it as a really great and successful and proven initiative that is delivering results for the teams who are on it, but also the partners as well.
Well, so thank you very much. Thank you all for your contributions. It has been a pleasure to share this session with you. I think that your comments have been really useful for the audience. And yeah, after my brief presentation, we'll give your turn to ask questions to us. Okay, thank you. Right now, let me please explain to you briefly what we do at GamBCN, and afterwards it will be your turn to launch us questions to us. So let me share some slides with you. GamBCN is a video game studio's incubation program based in Barcelona, promoted by the Catalan government, Barcelona municipality, and the consultancy firm Peninsula. We also have 3 private industry partners, Marvelous, Social Point, and Gameloft. And also we have the support of Wacom and Tangram Solutions. We look for talented and committed teams willing to create their own video game studios. And we are looking for games that have an identified market potential. That means that they have something special, maybe the narrative, the art, or the gameplay, but that will make it easy to market. What we offer training and mentoring all by industry professionals. We offer working space, monthly events and conferences to promote the networking between the developers and the industry. We organize a demo day where we help our teams to get funds and publishing agreements. And we also attend video game conferences like Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show in order to give visibility to our teams. There are a lot of publishers interested in our incubation program because they have seen that there is talent and good games coming out from GamBCN. Let me share you some success cases of awesome games that have come out from GamBCN that you probably know, like Aragami, Stay, Etherborn, or Enlink. And some metrics, after 4 editions, we have helped 26 teams. They have signed 13 publishing agreements, and they have raised more than 2.5 million euros. Next year, we are planning to do an online version of GamBCN, so it's much easier for foreign teams to join the program. So here you have both GamBCN contact details as well as contact details from all the speakers in case that you want to contact them, call them to just publish their games or just make any questions. So now it's your time.